we're simply losing time, okay? And we're going to teach you some ways to kind of combat that. Another one they talk about is this idea of social proof. Social proof is in unfamiliar social situations or large gathering social situations, you have a tendency to follow the crowd, okay? If you do not know how to behave in that social situation, the likely response is you are going to conform to the dynamics of that group and behave like everyone else in that group. That is what social proof is. An example would be, if a couple people came in while I'm giving this presentation, and let's just say they were having a loud and boisterous conversation amongst themselves. As they walk into the room having that conversation, the likely response is they see the dynamics of the room, and they either take their loud and boisterous conversation elsewhere, or they probably cease their loud and boisterous conversation, have a seat, and listen to the presentation, right? They're conforming to the social norms of that group, okay? That's what social proof is. I'm going to give you a little bit more on it here. One of the really good things about this presentation is you don't have to listen to me the whole time. We got a couple videos for you, okay? So I'm going to play you a video on social proof. And cut it short for time's sake and content's sake, but then we'll circle back and we'll talk about a few things in the video, okay?
Place like this street in New York City, if you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill.
Help! Help!
How long before he gets help?
Please help me. Help! Help! Please help!
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
Please somebody help!
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have a group of, effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help, and it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Minutes later, 34 people have passed without stopping.
People don't really want to just about the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps. She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
That's what she was saying. And I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that nobody noticed it. So there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
All right. So a little bit on social proof there, right? Mm-hmm. Looking to others as to how to respond in an unfamiliar, ambiguous, or social situation, okay? So you may be saying to yourself, okay, well, that's great. Social proof, that's cool. What the heck does that have to do with an active shooter situation? Well, here's what it has to do with it. If you have one well-trained person, okay, If you have one person that knows how to respond in this situation, they can lead others to safety, okay? The reality is most people are not trained in how to respond. The vast majority of people have never even thought about what they would do if they find themselves in this situation. So this is where we like to take the opportunity to really encourage you and empower you to take the information that you are given here today, and if you find yourself in this worst case scenario, be a leader and take others to safety, because people do not know how to respond. But if you look like and act like you know how to respond, people will follow you, okay? People will follow you. So take others to safety with you. So that's a little bit on the denial piece, okay? Whether your denial is rooted in that normalcy bias, whether that denial is rooted in social proof, whether that denial is rooted in a host of other things that it could be rooted in, get through denial as quickly as possible, okay? Get through that denial as quickly as possible and get to this deliberation phase, all right? This deliberation phase is when we start making decisions as to what the best course of action is, all right? But remember I said there are some challenges to that. So this is going to get a little bit scientific. I'm not a big fan of the slides right here. They get a little funky, but we're going to work through it. So essentially what we have is what psychologists have coined our human brain and our lizard brain, all right? Our human brain, rational in nature, okay? It's our thinking brain. It's the one we use 99.99% of the time. If I were to ask you a question, engage you in conversation, or present you with a problem, pretty quickly you're going to come up with an answer, continue that conversation with me, or give me a solution to that problem, right? This is the brain we're using 99.99% of the time. So even though things happen fast there in the world of the brain, they're actually happening very slow. So that is our rational brain. This lizard brain is instantaneous, it's spontaneous, and it's very reflexive in nature, okay? So an example of this would be, and I'm not gonna do it, but if I were to slam my hand down here on the pew, all right, some of you may jump, okay? You may startle. That is your natural startle response, okay? That is an example of your lizard brain overtaking your human brain. All right, your lizard brain overtaking your human brain. In this active shooter situation, we want to avoid that if we can. When that lizard brain takes over though, and at some point it leads to, and I'm sorry the slides are kind of funky, it leads to potentially fight, flight, or freeze response. And you've probably heard that terminology before, okay? So in an active shooter situation, fighting is not a bad response. Okay? In an active shooter situation, taking flight, that's not a bad response either. Okay? But if you find yourself in an active shooter situation and you freeze, that is what we're trying to avoid, because those who freeze are the ones who most likely become the victims. Okay? So the goal for us is to keep that human brain engaged as long as possible. All right? To keep that human brain engaged as long as possible. So how do we do that? Well, here's some tips for you. The first is to calm yourself down, okay? And you may be saying, yeah, well, how do you calm yourself down, all right? Well, if you engage your brain, okay, it's a little bit of mind over matter, okay? You can force yourself to calm yourself down a little bit. It takes a little bit of work, okay, but you can engage your brain to do this. Another is what we call combat breathing, all right? Has anybody in the room ever done yoga before? All right, we got some yoga people. Here we go. All right, so I'm not going to put the yoga people on the spot, but I do have some simple yes or no questions for you, okay? So during your yoga exercises, is there a certain breathing cycle that goes along with them? Yes, okay. And does this breathing cycle go something like this, where you breathe in through your nose for maybe a 3 or a 4 count, you hold it for a 3 or a 4 count, you breathe out through your mouth for a 3 or a 4 count, you hold it for a 3 or a 4 count, and then you go on and you repeat that cycle. Something like that. And my yoga people are shaking their head yes. Okay? So combat breathing is yoga breathing. It's exactly the same thing. We just like to use a little bit cooler terms. That's all it is. All right. Combat breathing or yoga breathing, this works. Okay. Some of you are very relaxed in this setting. Okay. Some more than others. But if you were to do this breathing cycle, you will find that you relax even more. Okay. So combat breathing or yoga breathing can really help you keep that human brain engaged. It can help you from preventing that lizard brain from taking over. This is what we teach military personnel. We teach public safety personnel this. It works. It truly does work. Another is to shift your emotion, okay? To shift your emotion. So if we were to find ourselves in this active shooter situation, what do you think our emotion would be? Myself included. Fear. Thank you. Fear. All of us, including me, okay? If we were to find ourselves in this situation, we are going to feel some sense of fear. Actively engage your brain, okay? You can shift your emotion to something more useful. How about anger? You have the right to be angry at the person who is doing this. The answer is yes. I'll tell you yes. Yes, you do. The person who is trying to kill you or other innocent people, you absolutely have the right to be angry at that person. Well, guess what? Anger is a much more useful emotion in this situation than fear. So shift your emotion to something more useful. And again, we're using our brain. When we are forcing our brain to do work, we are keeping the human brain engaged, therefore preventing that lizard brain from taking over. That's good. That's what we want. Lastly, they like to talk about staying fit. I think everybody knows how important that is in every aspect of your life. The way I like to describe it in terms of this presentation is if on a scale of 1 to 10, okay, and you hit 10, that's where that lizard brain takes over and that human brain kind of goes away, all right? Well, if your normal everyday operating level on that 1 to 10 scale is like a 6 or a 7 because you're out of shape, it doesn't take you very long to get to 10, right? If your normal everyday operating level on that 1 to 10 scale is at like a 2 or a 3 because you're in good shape, now it takes a lot longer to get to 10. And again, a lot longer that you get to keep that human brain engaged. So it may get to a point, and it probably will get to a point, where that lizard brain does take over, okay? Remember, it's reflexive, instantaneous, spontaneous. The ability to think critically under stress is gone. It's an automatic response. Well, here's what's great about our brains. You can pre-program that response, okay? You can pre-program that response. And the way you do that is through scripting and through practicing, okay? Scripting and practicing. And we're going to talk a little bit about these, all right? So scripting. Scripting is nothing more than taking the time to either think through or talk through, even in your small groups, how you would respond in the situation, okay? Taking the time ahead of time to talk out or think through how you would respond. Let me give you an example of this, okay? One of the things, 99% of the calls that the Atlanta police SWAT team goes out on is a barricaded gun, okay? What a barricaded gunman is nothing more than a person is under arrest for a felony crime. They are armed with a weapon, and they are refusing to come out of whatever stronghold they're in, an apartment, a business, a house, whatever the case may be. It is the SWAT team's job to get them out safely and get them into custody, okay? The first thing that the SWAT team does when they get on scene is they deploy what's called an immediate action team, all right? And that immediate action team is 4 or 5 officers that go down to the location where this person is holed up, all right? And their job is to deal with any situation that might come up before the rest of the team can deploy and the bigger tactical plan is implemented, okay? So if this person wants to surrender, it's their job to deal with it. If this person wants to be in a shootout with the police, it's their job to deal with it. If this person wants to come out and fight, it is their job to deal with it. If this person wants to try to escape, it is their job to deal with it. If this person has hostages and they do something to harm the hostages, it is their job to get in that house and deal with it as quickly as possible. Here's what works and what doesn't work, okay? The expectation was when I was a team leader is that when that team got in place, they will script out how they will respond to every single one of these situations, okay? And it only takes a few seconds. Hey, if he comes out, I'm doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. What we found over the years is when that immediate action team had the time and took the time to script out their response, when one of these things happened, they were like, hey, no big deal, we got it, all right? And things worked out very well. When they failed to script their response, or they didn't have the time to script out their response, literally the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. Guys are bumping into each other. You got 4 guys trying to give commands at the same time. Now the guy's doing the chicken dance because somebody's telling him to do this, someone's telling him to do this. It just doesn't work, okay? So that is a really good example, in my opinion, of how scripting can work. So I would encourage you, think through how you would respond, talk it through in your small groups in those environments that you're in, how you would respond. And we're going to give you the answers, okay? We're going to give you the answers. But scripting really does work. What's even better is practicing, okay? And it doesn't have to be a huge production, okay? Practicing can be nothing more than, hey, I'm with my group at work. We talk about how we would respond. Now let's practice that. Let's practice getting up and getting out. Let's practice moving to a defendant place area, okay? You are simply pre-programming it. You don't have to run. You can walk through it, okay? You're laying the blueprint, all right? So in this deliberation phase, we are making decisions as to what the best course of action is. We are met with some challenges, fear, physiologically, okay? But we gave you some ways to combat that, all right? The goal is to keep that human brain engaged as long as possible so you can make decisions. But if that lizard brain were to take over, scripting and practicing, if you pre-program the response, is going to be there, all right? So denial, get through it as quickly as possible. Deliberation phase, let's make some decisions as to what the best course of action is, and let's quickly get to this decisive moment, okay? And again, like I said before, this decisive moment is when you take action. I must say it one more time. It's when you take action. In this situation, you have to be active in your response. Folks, this isn't the kid at the gas pump with a gun trying to stick you up for your cell phone or carjack you, okay? That's not what this is. The person committing this crime is there to do harm. You are not going to talk them out of it, and they are trying to harm as many people as possible. You have to be active in your response. The kid at the gas pump, every time, you should be giving up your phone, your wallet, and giving them your car. Because that kid hasn't thought through what he's going to do if somebody opposes him. And what we find is when people do oppose him, they freak out and pull the trigger, okay? Which we don't, all right? But in this situation, we want you to be active in your response, okay? All right, there's a lot there. Again, you don't have to have the A answer, all right? Doing something is better than doing nothing. Doing nothing is absolutely not an option, all right? Denial, deliberation, decisive moment. All right, so we're going to transition now, okay? Before we start talking about the response itself, we're going to talk about, and I'm sorry, they do this sometimes. It's unpredictable. I don't know why. But basically what this slide says is essentially the number of deaths, statistically speaking, in these situations are dependent on 2 things, okay? The first of which is target availability. Target availability, folks, that's on you, okay? And that's what we're going to discuss the rest of the day, okay? How do we not become targets for these individuals? The other half is how quickly law enforcement arrives on scene, all right? That's on us, okay? That's on us. So the national average, when we're talking about active shooter situations, by definition, the law enforcement response time is 3 minutes, okay? It's right at 3 minutes. That's pretty good. I've been a cop for a long time. Getting there in 3 minutes is pretty good, okay? I would argue in the city of Atlanta, it's probably going to be faster than that, okay? There's a lot of cops, and we're in a smaller, more condensed area. People are going to get there quicker than that. But even though 3 minutes is not a lot of time, a lot of things can happen in those 3 minutes, okay? Now, if I were to stand here in silence for 3 minutes, number one, it'd be incredibly awkward. But beyond that, it would seem like an eternity, okay? if I were just to stand here silently for 3 minutes, okay? So a lot of things can happen in those 3 minutes. So before we get into what we are going to do, there's a couple things we are absolutely not going to do, okay? And I think you're seeing the theme here. We're not going to be passive. The first of which is what we call hide and hope. Hide and hope is not an option, okay? It's not an option in this situation, all right? I really do like this slide. This is one of my favorite slides in the presentation because it is a really good example of what we're talking about. If I were the bad guy and I came around the corner and I saw this, what options are available to this individual? None. Literally pigeonholed himself to where he has no options whatsoever, okay? On top of that, you need to know that there is very little in modern American construction that is going to stop bullets, okay? That desk, not stopping bullets, okay? A lot of our furniture, even a lot of our sheetrock walls, a lot of the objects that you might find in some of the places that you occupy, not likely to stop bullets, okay? So the perspective or the stance of the police department is these things will potentially conceal you. They will hide you for a period of time, but you're not, quote unquote, taking cover behind them, okay? Because they're not gonna stop those projectiles, all right? So hide and hope is not an option. Another that's not an option is playing dead, okay, is playing dead. So again, we're getting to a point where you get to listen to somebody other than me. So I'm gonna play you a quick video here. A couple things about this video. Number one, this is Christina Anderson. And if you don't know who Christina Anderson is, she is one of the victims of the Virginia Tech mass shooting that occurred in 2008. At the time, one of the worst in U.S. history, okay? She was shot multiple times, okay? And what Christina did after that is she went out and she partnered with some training organizations to kind of push this type of training out there, all right? And if you were to ask Christina today if she would react the same way she did back then in 2008, her answer would be absolutely not. But the reality is in 2008, people were not thinking about this. Not only were they not thinking about it, they certainly didn't have any training in it, okay? So I'm gonna let you listen to Christina. A couple other things though before I do. Number one, you're gonna hear about her experiences on that day, okay? And like I said, she went out afterwards for years and talked about her experiences and partnered with organizations that gave training to push this type of training out there, knowing that it could save lives, okay? We don't Monday morning quarterback, okay? We're not here to second guess how she responded or anybody else responded, okay? I will say this, we understand that they didn't have training, but we can certainly learn lessons from them, okay? And that's why we use this video. The other thing is I've trained a lot of cops over the years, and I've been doing this program since we started the civilian version probably about 5 years ago. So I've had the opportunity to train a lot of our citizens here in the city as well. And in training all of those people, I will say this. I have never used a more impactful training video than this one right here, okay? Not only is she going to talk about her experiences that day, she is going to solidify some of the things we already talked about. Even more so, she is going to open the door for us to start discussing the response, okay? And how that response could have saved her life and potentially the lives of everybody else in that classroom that she was in, okay? So enough for me. We're going to listen to Christina. Again, I'm going to cut it off for time's sake and content's sake. But once you got the point, we'll circle back to it, okay? There we go. I can do it.
So this is pretty important. This day, I ended up sitting in exactly the same seat I always did, in the back right-hand corner on the right side of the class. What we don't know is that this time, someone is downstairs and he's chaining all 3 doors shut. There's supposed to be desks there. Oh, you guys can see. We heard the first gunshots outside in the hallway, and my teacher, she opened the door. She immediately slammed it and she said, call 911. And the second that door closed, he walks in. He walks in shooting. There's absolutely no time. He goes to the other side of the classroom by the windows. He's holding 2 guns. He doesn't say anything. He just starts going down the rows of people. It's very quick. It's very loud. It's It's very scary. We had these very shitty desks. I get on the floor, I put my knees under the chair, my stomach on the seat, hands overhead, eyes are closed. As the shots keep going, and it's, like I said, very loud, I can tell it's getting closer and closer. And I'm telling myself, brace yourself, your turn's gonna come. Now, I didn't know what that meant. Like, I didn't think I was gonna get shot, but I knew that something really serious was going on. And I knew for whatever reason that I should just play dead. He shoots me. The first time it's in the back. And you'd be surprised, getting shot doesn't hurt that much because shock overtakes you, but it starts to like burn and really kind of seep in, and that's when it gets really uncomfortable. It's not pleasant. He leaves the first time, he goes across the hall, and while he's gone, cell phones are ringing, people are coughing, and the smell of gunpowder has like completely filled the room. Gunpowder is like this really sticky, pungent, warm smell, and it just makes you very, very thirsty. He comes back. Now, this time, the shooting's more intermittent. It's slower because he's looking to see who's alive. I remember telling myself to stop breathing because I can feel my stomach hitting that chair, and I'm saying, stop, like, he can see that you're alive. The third and final time, he killed himself in front of our classroom.
All right, so I'll give you guys and ladies a couple minutes or a few seconds to kind of digest that. It's heavy stuff right there. Okay, all right. So she says a lot of stuff there, okay? A lot of stuff that applies to everything we're doing, all right? So let's kind of recap. So she says they heard the gunshots in the hallway, all right? And the professor steps out to see what's going on, okay? So right there already, what do we have going on?
Mistake number one, she alerted him to there was somebody in that particular class.
So tactically, yes, sure, that absolutely did happen. That now this person for sure knows there are people in that classroom, okay? Remember that denial phase. Remember normalcy bias, okay? Placing something that is unfamiliar into something that makes sense. If you hear gunshots, okay, or if you hear gunshots in a building, even more so, you don't need to investigate whether it's gunshots or fireworks, all right? It's not fireworks. Err on the side of caution, implement your plan, initiate your response, okay? Because if you go to investigate or try to verify, you're just losing time, okay? And seconds equals lives in these situations, okay? So you hear gunshots inside of a building, don't investigate to see if it's fireworks. Err on the side of caution. Best case scenario, it's not gunshots and you can dust yourself off and your friends off a few minutes later and get back to business, okay? But initiate your plan, all right? So the professor goes outside, verifies that this is the worst case scenario. Guy's out there with a gun and he's shooting, all right? And she comes back in and starts to close the door. And what does she say? What does the professor say?
Call 911.
Call 911. Call 911. All right, so for me, having done this presentation hundreds of times, I will say this. This is the hardest part of the presentation for me, okay? I would consider myself 911, all right? I've been a police officer for 21 years. I'm in my 21st year. It's the only job I've ever had since I got out of graduate school. It's the only job I ever wanted since I was a little kid, all right? I am 911. So with that, I have to deliver a very real and a very unfortunate message to you, but I got to be honest with you, all right? In that situation where you are face-to-face with the threat, you are in close proximity to the threat is imminent to you, like right there with you or around the corner, 911 cannot help you, okay? And I'm just being honest. I hate to say it. I get goosebumps when I say it. I hate to say it, but I want to be real. 911 cannot help you, all right? They're not going to be there fast enough, okay? On top of that, it's going to be really hard physiologically for you to even get onto your phone to call 911 because your finger is going to be doing this, okay, 100 miles an hour, okay? Do something else to save your life. Do something else to save your life if you are that close to the threat, okay? Because 911 cannot help, all right? Now, when it is safe for you to do so, call 911. When it is safe for you to do so. And I promise you this, if gunshots are involved, 100 other people are calling 911. But if the threat is imminent to you, do something to save your life. So, she talks about how he came into the room, okay? How he came into the room, he goes up and down the aisles, and she talks about how she got on her knees, she put her chest on the chair, she put her hands on her head, and what did she say she did? Closed her eyes and did what? Waited her turn. Remember, she said, I didn't think I was going to get shot, but I knew something really bad was going to happen. I'm sorry. Waiting her turn, okay? Folks, we do not wait our turn, okay? We do not wait our turn in this situation. Again, driving home the importance of being active in our response and not passive in our response. If you were to ask Christina if she were to do it again the same way, she would say absolutely not, okay? Absolutely not. So the reality is Christina was shot 3 times. She did survive. Every other person in that classroom lost their life. Every other person in that classroom lost their life, okay? So that brings us to our response itself. You're probably saying to yourself, hey, this presentation's an hour and you've spent 40 to 45 minutes chatting about all this other stuff. We haven't talked about the response yet. There's a reason for that. The response is simple, okay? It's easy. Simple works under stress. So any response plan should be very simple in nature, okay? The model that we choose to use is avoid, deny, defend. I've heard some people say run, hide, fight. I think it's very similar, but not exactly the same, but we use avoid, deny, defend, okay? We're gonna break these down, all right? Avoiding, absolutely the A answer. You can remove yourself from the situation. That is the best case scenario, okay? Denying is denying access, okay? Denying access for this individual. Getting to an area where you can defend in place. You'll see that even in the most recent situations, when people have been able to do this successfully and they meet certain criteria, they are very successful, okay? And then you absolutely have the right to defend yourself. And in this situation, we want you to defend yourself, okay? And we're gonna give you some techniques and some tips on how to do that. The other thing I like about avoid, deny, defend, ADD or ADD. It's a simple acronym that you can draw upon under stressful situations. Oh, what did that add? It was add, right? Avoid, and you can just pull upon that information. So I think it works pretty well. So let's start breaking these down. So avoiding, like I said, is getting out, okay? It's evacuating, okay? The key is you need to know what options are available to you. I think everybody knows the way they came in this evening, okay? But does everybody know the other options that are available for getting out? All right, and this applies for every environment that you might find yourself in. So it's funny, I've been doing this so long now that my boys were younger when I started. They're teenagers now. I'm taking one to college tomorrow. Goodbye. Bye-bye. But I always tell this story. So I live in Midtown. And when my boys were younger and they used to like to hang out with me, we would walk to a lot of restaurants in Midtown, all right? We go to the Waffle House, the Hudson Grill, the Taco Mac, all these places down there in Midtown. We would walk to all these places to go eat on the weekends and watch games and hang out and have fun, okay? And every time we went into one of these places, I would have a 10 to 15 second conversation with them, and they're knuckleheads, okay? They're bozos, there's no doubt about it. Telling them what I wanted them to do if a bad guy came in with a gun, okay? If a bad guy came in with a gun, all right? And I'm confident, even back then when they were just little guys and bozos, that they could figure this out because we took the time to script it out so many times, okay? So it's not just knowing your exits, it's knowing all of your exits, okay? What I used to preach to them in all of the restaurants that we went to is if bad guy comes in with a gun, you get your little behinds up and you march them to the kitchen. Because what's on the other side of every kitchen of every restaurant in the city of Atlanta? A back door. That's right. A door out of there. Okay. But here's the thing. People aren't thinking about that door. Okay. They're not thinking about it. The vast majority are not thinking about it. Okay. So it's not just knowing your exits. It's take the time to recognize what other options are available to you. There's some exits back there somewhere. Okay. There's no rule that says you have to go out the way you came in. All right. So it's not just knowing your exits. It's knowing all of the options available to you in all the environments that you're in. Okay. It's kind of like the safety briefing on an airplane when they talk about the nearest exit might be the one behind you, right? Okay. So knowing your exits is the key to success. Call 911. Call 911 when it is safe for you to do so. I think we drove that point home a little bit earlier. All right. So another thing is we want you to consider your secondary exits. And what we mean by secondary exits is, folks, in this situation, you can do some property damage. We will take some property damage over loss of life or injury any day of the week. All right. The key is you got to know what your options are. Okay. You could go out these windows.
Absolutely.
I think they'd be mad, but we can get them replaced. All right. You can get out these windows and get to safety. Okay. So it's not just knowing your exits, it's knowing your secondary exits. So I'm going to give you a tip on breaking windows, okay, especially commercial windows. So in my SWAT days, I've broken a lot of windows, okay, so I'm pretty good at it. Here's a couple tips for you. Number one is you got to have the right tool to do it. Any really stout, bulky object will work, all right? I'm a big fan of fire extinguishers. We'll talk more about that later. Not a huge fan of firefighters, but I'm a big fan of fire extinguishers, okay? And here's the key. If you take that fire extinguisher or whatever item you want to use to break out that glass, and you come over here and you try to hit that glass somewhere in the middle, you better put your helmet on, because that joker's probably coming back and going to hit you in the head, all right? The way you break out glass is you attack the corners, all right? You attack the corners, and once you break out the corners, you can rake out the rest of the glass using that object. But a lot of commercial glass is pretty strong, and it flexes, so if you hit it in the middle, oftentimes it might bounce back at you, okay? So we attack glass in the corners, all right? So again, avoiding is getting out. The key is know your exits, know those exits that are not the ones that you came in or the ones that are right in front of you. Know all of your options, okay? And consider your secondary exits, okay? Know that you can go through a window, all right? That's the A answer, no question about it. Have that plan in place ahead of time in the environments or the facilities that you spend the most time. Denying, all right? Denying is denying this person access to you, okay? We like to call it defending in place. We want you to get to a defend-in-place location, okay? This is a really good option, all right? A defend-in-place location is any door that has a lock and you can pile some stuff up against, i.e. barricade, okay? Here's what the data shows. When people have been able to get in a room, lock the door, and barricade the door, just meaning pile a bunch of stuff up against the door, in these situations, by definition, no door has ever been breached. Bad guy has not been able to get through that door, all right? Recent example, Buffalo, New York, the grocery store mass shooting. Some of the employees were able to get into the back office, and they were able to lock the door to the back office. They were able to push some of the furniture in that office up against that door. The guy did try to get into that door, and he was unsuccessful in doing so. So he moved on. All right? So identify those areas in the places that you occupy that are rooms with a lock, and have some stuff you can pile up against the door, okay? That is a really good option. It's a great option, all right? So a couple things on barricading doors, okay, we're going to talk about, just because we think it's important. There we go. Any and everything goes up against that door, okay? It doesn't matter what it is, all right? The other thing is, and people will argue with me about that, I invite the argument, but let's not have it tonight, because I promise you I'm right, okay? If you have an inward opening door or an outward opening door, it doesn't matter, barricade it anyway, all right? So what I mean by an inward opening door, I think you can see the value of if I'm the bad guy trying to get in the room and I have to push the door into the room, it's inward opening, piling a bunch of stuff up behind it because it makes it hard for me to push, right? Makes it hard for me to push through. Our philosophy is it doesn't matter if it's inward opening or outward opening, barricade it anyways. Outward opening would mean I'm bad guy trying to get in and I have to pull the door open to me. Well, barricade that door also. Here's why. If I'm able to defeat the lock and pull and open that door towards me, but now I have a pile of stuff that I have to contend with, we have just changed the dynamics of that situation, okay? Number one, this person is now reacting to what we're doing. Number two, he has to figure out a way to navigate through that pile of stuff, i.e. buying us more time. And furthermore, he has completely shown his hand, right? We know what he is there to do. Well, we can prepare, and we know we are about to prepare for worst case scenario. We're about to be in a fight for our lives, okay? We're about to be in a fight for our lives. If he's able to get the door open and now he's trying to get through all that stuff, we know what it is. Let's not be fearful of it. It is what it is. Let's get angry and let's get ready to fight. All right? So, more is better, heavier is better. Any and everything up against that door. You have these options that they like to talk about. Most of our commercial doors have that little arm at the top, right? That arm that folds. So if you're able to get up there with either an extension cord or even a belt and lash down on that arm when it's folded up, and I see you have some out there as well, I dare you to find the person who's strong enough to pull it open from the other side, okay? So that's an option, okay? That's an option as well. So remember I said, and this is important, okay? If you've ever seen a police officer respond to a call at a house or an apartment, you will never or unlikely to or rarely would you see that officer stand in front of that door and knock on the door, okay? What they'll do is they'll stand to the side of the door and knock on the door, pull their baton out and whack the door, whatever they're gonna do, right? They don't stand in front of that door. The reason for that is very early on in their training, they were taught that we don't stand in doorways. We call that the fatal funnel, okay? The fatal funnel. We try not to spend time in the fatal funnel because if somebody is going to shoot at you when you knock on that door, it is likely that those rounds are going to come through that door, okay? So it just makes sense to, hey, I'm gonna knock, hopefully they don't shoot, but if they do, they're going through the door and we're not standing behind the door, okay? So why is that concept important for you, all right? We want you to be aware of the fatal funnel. Do not stand behind doors. Don't linger behind doors. Don't hang around doors, okay? If you are defending in place, any and everything gets piled up against that door, do your work, do it expeditiously, but then get away from the 90-degree angle of that door, all right? And the reason is, although none of these rooms, if they're locked and barricaded, have been breached, the doors have been shot through. The data shows that, okay? The research shows that. On multiple occasions, these offenders, even though they are not able to get through that door, will fire rounds through that door, okay? So do your work, do it expeditiously, but then get away from the 90-degree angle of the door. Does that make sense? Don't spend time in the fatal funnel. All right, so denying, and I get a little bit annoying, but I just want you to have the concepts down. Avoiding is getting out, okay? That's evacuating. Know your options. Know those doors that are not in plain view, and know your secondary options. Know what windows you can get out and what tool you're gonna use to do it, okay? Denying, that is getting to a defend in place location. Here's the thing, you gotta have those places identified ahead of time. Okay, you got to know where I could potentially defend in place in the spaces that you're occupying. Any and everything up against the door, doesn't matter if it's an inward opening or an outward opening door, okay? Defend in place. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a question.
All right.
Okay, if a shooter is in the back of this church,
Yes.
stands up, starts shooting, are you saying I should run over there, get a fire extinguisher and try to bust out this window? Or should I try to go through that door?
What's the fastest?
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to find out. If he's back there shooting, I'm sitting here, run out this door.
Tell everybody, to come with you.
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get over there and try to bust the window out.
Right.
I think the best thing for me to do is try to get through one of these doors.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Now, if we're like in a classroom or something, in that case,
Mhm.
he was already there.
Yeah, if you look at in the instance of a lot of these situations, right? Christina does say, the professor came back in and said, call 911. And when she came through, he was right in the room behind her, right? And she said, there was just no time. There was just no time. There was no time for them to avoid, right? He was already in the room. They're not getting out. They're not getting out of that room with him standing there at the door, okay? There was no time for them to deny this person access, right? They couldn't button up shop. They couldn't close and lock the door and pile 100 desks up against that door. He was already in the room, right? But it doesn't mean it's game over. That's why there's multiple options. You need to be able to apply these options in this high stress situation.
But when he went out in the hall to see what was going on, they could have locked the door.
Absolutely, they could have. But again, we're not second guessing them because they had no training.
Okay.
They had no training.
Okay.
There's a million things or a bunch of things they could have done better to survive that situation.
Right.
The reality is people weren't talking about this back then.
We don't think about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if that were to happen again, we should win that situation.
Right.
We should absolutely win. So let's say you get through there and for whatever reason, doors are blocked. That's not game over. You can either go to another exit because you know what the exits are, or now you can start looking for a secondary exit, right? Plan A doesn't work, you go to plan B. Plan B doesn't work, you go to plan C. Okay, we're active in our response. I know we're kind of sidebarring, and I'm cool with that. It's great. Here's why SWAT teams are successful. Okay, in my opinion, having 11 years SWAT experience. Here's why SWAT teams are successful. They have a very basic plan, and when that plan doesn't work, they have a very basic plan B that everyone knows about. And when that doesn't work, they have a very basic plan C that everyone knows about. So when something doesn't work, a team leader steps in and says, hey dudes, didn't work. Guess what? We're going to plan B. We're going to plan B. And everyone's like, okay, we're going to plan B. No stress, no drama, no big deal, because everyone knows what plan B is. It's when there's not a plan in place where things get a little hectic and fast moving and bad decisions are made, okay? So having that plan in place ahead of time, that's why I think those teams are successful. They're just like, we're going to this. Oh, it's not working, we're going to this. Okay, no big deal, no sweat, because those plans are in place. So we talked about avoiding, getting out. Any answer? Appreciate the questions. We talked about defending in place, how important it is to identify those locations ahead of time. Lastly, you absolutely have the right to defend yourself, okay? And we're not here to teach you martial arts or defensive tactics or how to disarm somebody, okay? But I can teach you this. Improvise a weapon and use it as a distraction, all right? Improvise a weapon, use it as a distraction, and you have strength in numbers, all right? So what do I mean by that? Anything could be an improvised weapon. If I were bad guy, okay, and you all picked up your phones or your water bottles or whatever small object, your keys, and you all picked those up, and please don't do this, but you somewhat simultaneously threw those items at me, how do you think I'm going to respond to that? And again, please don't.